Right now, 8 billion people are alive on this planet. 8 billion voices, 8 billion heartbeats. We build cities that touch the clouds. We carry the entire world in our pockets. We have become so many, so permanent, that it is easy to forget something. We almost weren't here at all. Not as a metaphor, not as ancient mythology. There was a real moment in history when every human being alive on Earth could have gathered in a single valley. And the valley would not have been full. 70,000 years ago, a volcano woke up. Not the kind you read about in textbooks, not the kind that closes airports for a week. This was Toba, in what is now Sumatra, Indonesia, the largest eruption in 2 million years. The explosion sent ash falling across thousands of miles, across forests, across rivers, across the open sky, and slowly, the sun disappeared. Imagine waking up one morning and the sky is the wrong color, not storm gray, not rain clouds, just dim and pale, like something has been placed between the earth and the sun. That dimness didn't lift for years. Temperatures across the planet fell, in some regions by 15 degrees. Forests that had stood for thousands of years began to go quiet. Animals that had never known cold started to disappear. Food became something you searched for instead of something you found. Nights felt longer than they should. Fires were harder to keep going, and nobody understood what was happening. There was no explanation for any of it, just the cold and the dark and the gradual disappearance of the world people had always known. This is where the science becomes almost impossible to absorb. Researchers studying human DNA found something that shouldn't be there. A gap. A moment in our genetic history where diversity nearly vanished completely. The numbers they arrived at are quietly devastating. Somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 breeding humans remained on the entire planet. Not a country, not a region, the entire planet. There are more tigers alive today than there were humans then. We were, by every biological measure, an endangered species. What that means is this: every person you have ever seen, every face in every crowd, every civilization that ever rose and fell, all of it traces back to that tiny, frightened, surviving group. We are not just the same species. We are genuinely, measurably, the same family. Chimpanzees living in a single forest in Africa carry more genetic diversity than all 8 billion of us combined. Think about that for a moment. 8 billion people connected to the same small circle of survivors who somehow made it through the cold, through the hunger, through the dark. We just don't look like we nearly disappeared. But somewhere in that darkness, someone kept a fire alive. Picture a small group, maybe 20 people, maybe fewer, huddled close because the world beyond the firelight had become something to fear. Children pressed against their parents. Nobody knew if the cold would end, or if morning would feel any different from the morning before. But the fire stayed lit. And around that fire, something quietly extraordinary was happening. People were talking, sharing what little food remained, keeping each other awake, keeping each other human. Fire had always kept predators away, but those nights, it kept something else alive too. The group itself. Slowly, the sky began to lighten. The cold loosened its grip. Plants returned to ground that had been barren for years. And the survivors moved. Carefully at first, then with more certainty, out of the valleys where they had sheltered, across rivers and coastlines, into territories no human had ever touched. They carried nothing but fire, language, and the memory of how close it had come. Every civilization that ever existed, every language ever spoken, every song ever sung, all of it came from them. There's something quietly staggering about being human. Not because we are powerful, but because we are improbable. We came within a whisper of not existing at all. And yet here we are, not triumphant, not inevitable, just still here.